Hello everyone, my name is Boban Stojkovic, and today I'll be going over my final project for MIS 4470. My project is called Pokédex Analysis, and my project was to figure out if there was a correlation between a Pokemon's height and weight compared to its 6 attributes. These attributes are attack, special attack, defense, special defense, HP, and speed. I also wanted to see if height and weight correlate to a Pokemon's overall base stats or base total. Another thing I wanted to figure out was which Pokemon types of the 18 were the strongest or weakest in each of the 6 attributes, and which Pokemon types were the strongest overall, considering their base totals. So without further ado, let's begin. The first thing I did was to load the ggplot2, tidyr, and dplyr libraries. These will help me in analyzing and visualizing the data later on. After this, the second thing I did was load the necessary data I needed. The data I needed was stored in a CSV file called pokemon.csv. I obtained this CSV file from Kaggle. After loading the CSV file, I used the stir and summary functions to get a better idea of what I was dealing with. There are a total of 41 variables in this data set. Of these 41, we will only be looking at 11 variables. These variables are the attack, defense, special defense, HP, speed, and base total attributes, along with the type 2, type 1, weight, and height variables of the Pokemon. After this, I tried to find a correlation between a Pokemon's weight and its attributes. So I used the correlation function to see how weight was related to height, attack, special attack, defense, and so on. The results that I found were that, as expected, height and weight were correlated. The taller a Pokemon is, the more it weighs, the more Pokemon weighs, the taller it is. Surprisingly, I saw that a Pokemon's weight has absolutely no correlation with its speed. So for instance, a very heavy-set Pokemon could be very fast, or a very skinny Pokemon could be very slow, and a skinny Pokemon could also be very fast, and a more heavy-set Pokemon could also be very slow. Aside from this, the second highest correlation was between weight and base total, which was still pretty low. After this, I decided to see how height would correlate to the other variables and attributes. Height and weight, obviously the same correlation as above, but interestingly, height and base total had a much higher correlation this time than for weight and base total. And even though this is pretty low, this is the only correlation that was above 0.5 for both of these analyses besides the original correlation of height correlated to weight. After this, I tried doing some preliminary graphing. However, RStudio gave me messages stating that 20 rows had to be removed because they contained missing values. And in order to figure out where these missing values were, I used the following code of is.na corresponding to weight and height to see where the missing values were. As you can see, I had missing values for Pokemon 19, 20, 26, 27, 28. I believe right here this is 76, 75, 74. If I'm wrong, excuse me, but I have the correct values under this code. So after running the code, I saw that I had missing values for 19, 20, 26, 27, 28, 37, and 74, 75, and so on. And these correspond to the 20 rows exactly that RStudio told me had to be removed due to missing values. So to fill in the correct information, I went to a website called bulbapedia.bulbagarden.net/wiki/main page. This website is essentially an encyclopedia of Pokemon information, and it contains all the following heights and weights for the Pokemon I needed. So for instance, I was missing information on Pokemon 19, which is Rattata. So on the website, I either typed in 19 or Rattata, and it would tell me the weight in kilograms and the height in meters. So I used this website to fill in all the missing information for my 40 different values. Now with this information, I recalculated the above correlation, and I could continue on to plotting the visualizations. So the first visualization I plotted was to create a scatter plot between height and weight, and I used the 18 different Pokemon types as a color. As you can see, the majority of the observations are concentrated in this area, and Pokemon type has little to no bearing on the relationship between height and weight, with a few outliers. The second scatter plot I did was to do a correlation between weight and base total. Once again, using type 1 as the color. As you can see from the graph, this has a kind of similar distribution to the above scatter plot, where most of the observations in the same area with a little outliers. After this, my third scatter plot was the same as the first one, but I switched the axis of height and weight, and it yielded very similar results where most of the observations were concentrated on the left-hand side with a few outliers, but once again, Pokemon type has little to no bearing on this relationship. My fourth scatter plot, I tried to see the relationship between height and base total. This was mostly the same as the scatter plot between weight and base total, but this one had a little bit more correlation. And I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but once again, type 1 has nothing to do with this relationship besides from these outliers. Moving on, I now plotted the average of all the Pokemon's 6 attributes, and I wanted to see of the 18 different types of Pokemon, which ones had the lowest and highest values for each of the 6 attributes. As you can see from this graph above, Dragon Pokemon had the highest attack, Steel Pokemon had the highest defense, Dragon Pokemon also had the highest HP, Psychic Pokemon had the highest special attack, Fairy Pokemon had the highest special defense, and Flying Pokemon had the highest speed. In terms of lowest attributes, we saw that Fairy Pokemon now had the lowest attack, Normal Pokemon had the lowest defense, Bug Pokemon had the lowest HP, Fighting Pokemon had the lowest special attack. Oh, sorry about this. Ground Pokemon had the lowest special defense, and Steel Pokemon had the lowest speed. Then I graphed just the base total for the Pokemon and related to the 18 different types of Pokemon. I didn't want to include the base total with these stats as this graph was already convoluted and constrained enough where it was kind of hard to see with all the 6 different attributes. I didn't want to add a 7th. And adding just one attribute gives you a very clear idea of which Pokemon is the strongest and weakest. So comparing just type 1 Pokemon, the primary type, as you can see from the graph, Dragon is the strongest overall Pokemon type, with Bug Pokemon being the weakest. After this, I wanted to do the same graph as above, but not this graph, the one above this graph, this plot, except instead of using type 1, I used type 2, which is a secondary type of Pokemon, to see if there was a difference in the strongest type 1 Pokemon and weakest type 1 Pokemon. As expected, there were differences. This time, Fighting Pokemon as a secondary type had the highest attack, Rock Pokemon had the highest defense, Dragon Pokemon once again had the highest HP, Fire Pokemon now have the highest special attack, Psychic Pokemon now have the highest special defense, and Normal Pokemon have the highest speed. Sorry about that, excuse me. Now in terms of lowest attributes for the type 2s, we observe that Normal Pokemon have both the lowest attack and lowest defense. Bug Pokemon have both the lowest HP and lowest special attack. Dark Pokemon now have the lowest special defense, and Rock Pokemon now have the lowest speed. Then, as I did with the base stats total, I plotted the graph between, instead of type 1, type 2, versus the average base total for base stats. And as the above graph, there was a difference. Instead of Dragon Pokemon now being the strongest Pokemon, Fighting Pokemon inched them out as the strongest secondary type Pokemon. However, just as the graph with type 1 Pokemon, Bug Pokemon are still the weakest Pokemon overall. And if you've played Pokemon before, this is of no surprise, as everyone knows that bug Pokemon usually do the worst, and bug Pokemon are usually Pokemon that you just, I don't want to say the word defeat's a better word. Bug Pokemon are just Pokemon you defeat to gain XP in order to level up your own Pokemon. Most people don't really catch bug Pokemon. They're just a means to an end of making your Pokemon stronger. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to my presentation, and that was my analysis of the Pokédex.